Okay, well, it is now 11:02 a.m. I think we still have some folks coming in, but let's go ahead and get this a webinar started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first technical assistance webinar for the Quantum Fast Challenge. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Tristan Stein. I'm a program officer with the California Education Learning Lab, and I'm assisting with the management of the Quantum Fast Challenge. I'm joined this morning by Lark Park, Director of the California Education Learning Lab, as well as by some colleagues from the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. With us today, we have Trey Bradley, Deputy Director for Innovation and Emerging Technologies at GO-Biz, as well as Jaden Saldana, Tech Transfer and Commercialization Coordinator at GO-Biz. And both Trey, Jaden, and Lark will all be introducing themselves a little bit more in just a little bit. We're also joined today by Selena Burns and Marisa Chung from the Learning Lab. They're both helping with the management of this webinar. So in this webinar this morning, we're going to be discussing some of the key goals and priorities for Quantum Fast, and also giving you some key background and information about this grant opportunity. We will have time at the end of the webinar for Q&A. And here I just want to say a couple quick words about housekeeping. We ask that you please remain muted for the duration of the webinar. Please use the Q&A function for asking questions. If the Q&A function is not visible, you should be able to access it under the More button at the bottom of your browser. We're going to be monitoring the Q&A throughout the duration of the webinar, and we'll respond to questions during the Q&A session. Please use the chat function to introduce yourselves to each other and also to network among yourselves. We will be posting the slides for this webinar as well as a recording on the Quantum Fast webpage in the next couple days. And with that, I think we can go ahead and get started, Marisa, with the first slide. Okay, so I think this is probably this part is probably already familiar to you since you are here at this webinar. But Quantum Fast Challenge is a competitive grant opportunity to support the growth of California's quantum industry and strengthen the California quantum talent pipeline. Quantum Fast is a partnership between the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development and the California Education Learning Lab. Through Quantum Fast, GO-Biz and Learning Lab intend to award up to $2.7 million in funding, with individual awards ranging from $50,000 up to $500,000. And these grants will have an implementation timeline of 18 to 24 months. I'm going to get into some of the details of the RFP in just a little bit. But first, here I want to hand it over to my colleagues from GO-Biz to talk a little bit about GO-Biz, about about the background for Quantum Fast, and talk a little bit about how this grant fits into California's broader economic strategy around quantum and quantum technologies. Trey, please take it from here.
Thank you, Tristan. Good morning, everyone. My name is Trey Bradley. I'm the Deputy Director for Innovation and Emerging Technologies at the California Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, or GO-Biz, as we call it. And I lead a lot of our team's work across quantum, artificial intelligence, robotics, fusion, space. And we, as an office, are the point of contact for economic development and job creation efforts broadly. We're a small team, but our primary service is to the business and economic development community. So economic development managers exist at universities, at cities and local governments, but also businesses who do site selection and provide services to companies, and then companies and executives directly. Next slide. We have a broad range of teams. So I want to just highlight this slide is that, we provide our core offering as GO-Biz is service centric. And so whether you are someone who is looking for if you're a business looking for site selection within California, you're seeking incentive navigation or permit assistance. For example, you need assistance as a business or a community with dealing with our utilities. We have a unit for that. And then we have, of course, a program called California Competes within our office, which is our largest business incentive program, which currently has a round open right now for the next 2 weeks. And there will not be another one until next year. So that's for California Competes, which is our kind of our hallmark business growth program. And you can see Innovation Emerging Technologies unit there, which is a new team that has been created within this office. Next slide. So, what is really the foundation of what we are doing? So, GO-Biz, we are a fairly young agency within state government. We've only been around for a little bit over 10 years now. And so, within the realm of state government, we kind of looked across the landscape, and it had been decades since the state had a statewide economic strategy. And rather than doing a top-down approach, we wanted to take it a little different this time and do a regional approach to thinking about both economic development placemaking, industry development and strategy, ecosystem building, and then incentive alignment, and how do we align programs that we do, whether that be in workforce, tax exemptions for manufacturing equipment, or California competes. How do we align these incentives to strategic sectors within regions that they have identified? So the state was subdivided into 13 regions with regional conveners who did their own economic analysis across the region and selected a suite of sectors relative to them over the next decades to come. It also came with funding. We're going through current funding cycles, and we're wrapping some of those funding opportunities in this year. Which brings us to this placemat, which is our ecosystem map of all the different sectors that regions have lent and prioritized for their regional jobs first plans. And so you can see the three different categories and how we kind of categorize them. One is strengthen, which are industries that California has traditionally had a lot of investment and development with. Some of them are geographic reasons. For example, we have large ports in our state, some of the largest ports in the Western Hemisphere in our state. And so naturally, we are a leader in transportation and logistics. Of course, the film industry, which many folks are familiar with. Accelerate is where we're seeing a lot of, I would say, combined government investment, but then also a lot of traditional capital being invested in these sectors. They also are a little bit more established. Their markets are a little bit more well known. They're more familiar to, traditional banks and the likes. That includes, a lot of the industries within the clean energy economy now, like batteries, but includes space defense satellites and high tech like hardware and semiconductor. And then there's bet. And so bet are new markets, emerging sectors for the state of California that we have that regions have helped us map out. Some of them have often very VC heavy, have a lot of R&D still ongoing. Many companies who are in startup mode. So as you can see on the far right-hand side under high tech, that includes quantum. So quantum has been made a priority strategic sector for the state. And under our Jobs First regional plan, there have been both regions and the state who have prioritized quantum as a sector for decades to come. Next slide. So that really brings us to Quantum California and why we're all here today, which is the most exciting piece. So Quantum California is really our statewide initiative to really build the foundation of an ecosystem and to connect the different parts of that ecosystem together. And also at the same time, get our state agencies involved so they can learn and make changes to things like maybe aligning business incentive programs or making changes to those incentive programs to support the industry. It also means supporting the workforce and education around this industry, and accessing equipment, our national labs and research facilities in a way that allows both job creation to take place, and new startups and industries or new businesses to form. So we have been meeting in this past year, and we've had several convenings. So we've had at UC San Diego most recently. We've had at UC Santa Barbara. And really, we have another upcoming convening this year at the end of this year. And the governor invested $4 million as well as signed a bill regarding a strategy development. He also reauthorized $150 million tax exemption for manufacturing equipment for companies of which quantum is a priority. Um, But yes, so one of the things that we are tasked with in two parts is one is developing the industry strategy relevant to quantum and carrying that work forward. And then of course, investing an initial 4 million of which this funding for this program provides. And so what is really important about this program, I think, is how we are able to illustrate the demand within this industry, both to not only ourselves in state agency world, but also to our elected representatives in the state of California, our local governments, and the rest, that quantum is here, quantum is now. So really, this is our, if you have not connected with our effort on Quantum California, please do. And of course, if you are a business not only looking at this opportunity, have yet to speak with our team and services, please reach out because we're constantly having those conversations every day. We want to make sure your quantum investment continues to stay here and happen here in California. Next slide. So yeah, this kind of just talks to a little bit what I've mentioned. I want to also just mention of how many different stakeholder engage organizations we've engaged, and we've provided probably business services. I'm probably we're a little bit over 40 now, probably about 50 to 60. Um, One of the other things too that I wanted to share, because I know that a lot of people here are from the higher education community. Um, our governor has recently put in the largest single higher education investment in U.S. history, which is larger than the next four states combined, plus 30%. Nothing is stopping any of our incentive programs within the realm of business development from being used for purposes and investments that are happening on a campus. So I often, I think when I've gotten into this position, and I've spoken with a lot of universities, community colleges, oftentimes I feel like they feel sometimes that the programs that we have, whether they be for exemptions for equipment or tax incentive programs, right, that attract companies, if companies are making an investment in your campus or university for equipment or for building or for hiring employees or doing a partnership with you, that is eligible investment for our programs. So just wanted to highlight that, just take a moment to look at the world of incentive programs that we have at business.ca.gov. We have a running list and we keep it updated in real time. Go ahead, next slide. And with that, that concludes for me. And so thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Trey, for talking about GO-Biz and all of the exciting things going on in your agency. I'm Lark Park. I'm director of the California Education Learning Lab, and I wanted to just say a few words about Learning Lab for those of you who don't know us, but it's great to see some familiar names and faces in this group. Learning Lab is a higher education grant funding program, primarily for the three segments of higher education, the UCs, the CSUs, and the California community colleges. We fund faculty-led innovations, primarily in teaching and learning, but we also fund other types of projects in higher education as well. Our new parent agency is the Government Operations Agency. After being with the Governor's Office of Planning and Research for a number of years, which became the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation, we've been administered in partnership with the Foundation for California Community Colleges since 2020. They are a 501c3 and the foundational arm of the California Community Colleges system. They also serve several state agencies as well as some smaller education-related initiatives. But you will see the foundation in terms of their logo and their involvement in this Quantum Fast Challenge. I wanted to highlight that Learning Lab focuses on five things in our approach because you'll see these within the context of the RFP and what is important to Learning Lab. We value innovation in higher education, specifically to better student outcomes. We believe very much in creating community and collaboration, intersegmental collaboration within higher education. We think that that supports student learning in the best way possible. We also focus on theory and research. We want our grantees to contribute to the science of human learning and the research base in higher education. And then we focus on educational practice, modernizing teaching practice as new insights and tools and evidence becomes available to us. And then obviously in new sectors such as quantum, we think that learning about how education best works in this sector is really important. We highlight that assets created by our grantees are available for use broadly in California. And then lastly, we want to take findings and data and use it to impact educational policy and certain how we can better outcomes for our students who are attending all of our post-secondary institutions. Next slide. So since 2019, we have funded 122 projects across 114 different institutions, primarily in California. The majority of projects are collaborative projects between institutions and oftentimes between segments. We've committed more than 57 million in funding to date on projects that have reached more than 13,000 faculty, with student impact far exceeding those numbers. And we've done a lot of theme challenges in the past. Our last competitive RFP that we put out was the AI challenge, and I know some of you are grantees of the AI challenge who are here today. Before that, the data science grant challenge, and before that, we funded a lot of projects focused on improving math instruction in our post-secondary institutions. I want to highlight that we're a very collaborative grant maker in the sense that we do all we can to facilitate the success of our grantees. And we very much consider Learning Labs grantees to be a community of faculty, scholars, and researchers who are really committed to doing important work to help students succeed in their educational and career journeys ahead. I want to highlight that this is the first partnership with GO-Biz, and we're very excited to be collaborating with them on the Quantum Fast Challenge. And this is, I think, a new model for us where we are leaning into a workforce sector that is very important to the state and understanding how we can leverage industry's interest and faculty interest and create new models for both education and other types of uh, uh, intellectual property development as part of this new RFP. And with that, I'll turn it back to Tristan.
Thanks so much, Lark. I'm going to now talk about some of the key features of the RFP. I just want to give folks a quick reminder to please, as much as possible, use the Q&A function for questions. We will be saving time at the end of this RFP, sorry, at the end of this webinar to address questions about the RFP. As Trey mentioned, Quantum Fast aims to support and strengthen California's quantum ecosystem. And Quantum Fast aims to do this by supporting projects that fall under two broad funding priorities. Quantum Fast will support projects that build and strengthen the quantum talent pipeline, especially at the certificate, undergraduate, and master's level. And Quantum Fast will also support projects that provide applied use case demonstrations of quantum technologies. That is, projects that pair faculty researchers with industry partners to test the application of quantum technologies toward real world, real life issues and uses. Next slide, please. And Quantum Fast will advance these two priorities by providing grants for projects that fall under four application tracks. I'm going to talk about these tracks very briefly here. The RFP goes into significantly more detail, so we do encourage you to review the RFP here closely. And again, we're happy to take questions at the end of this webinar. But as I said, there are four main application tracks. The first is that Quantum Fast will support projects that expand access to quantum relevant hands-on experiences. That is, hands-on experiences with quantum and quantum relevant technologies. It will, secondly, support projects that build entry points to the quantum workforce for learners in adjacent fields. And one point I want to quickly make here for clarification is that Quantum Fast does define adjacent fields broadly. So track 2 could support projects that create entry points into quantum for learners in fields that are commonly associated with quantum, like engineering, physics, and computer science. Track 2 could also support projects that address fields that are likely to be impacted by quantum. So it could support projects that focus on giving learners in those kinds of fields the skills they need to collaborate in the creation or deployment of quantum applications. Track 3 will support those use case demonstrations that I spoke about. And finally, track 4 is the wild card track. That's for projects that strengthen the quantum talent pipeline, but don't fall cleanly under tracks 1, 2, or 3. This is where projects, for example, that aim to support quantum community building or engagement or retention for students in quantum fields could fall. And one last key point I want to make here is that projects can apply under multiple tracks. So, for example, a project could apply under tracks 1 and 4 if it both provided students with hands-on experiences with quantum technologies and also did something like, for example, sponsoring quantum hackathons that built student engagement and community around quantum technologies in the quantum industry. Next slide, please. Okay, so as we discussed, we've got 4 application tracks, and there are some key points that we want to make with respect to eligibility requirements for projects pursuing projects under one of these 4 tracks. Obviously, projects have to align with the priorities and the tracks that we lay out in the RFP. But in addition, projects must be led by faculty or administrators from a UC, CSU, or a California community college. Nonprofit institutions, private nonprofit colleges, national labs are welcome and encouraged to be partners on project teams, but the projects need to be led by faculty or administrators from one of the 3 segments of California public higher education. Again, nonprofits, national labs can be sub-awardees, they can be partners, but they cannot lead a project. Projects also are required to provide at least 2 letters of recommendation to accompany their full proposal. I'll just mention here, we're going to talk more. We have got a second technical assistance webinar coming up in September where we will talk more about the full proposal. And the information about letters of recommendation, the full proposals, is in the RFP and also addressed in the FAQ document. But we just want to highlight here that one eligibility requirement to be aware of is that projects do need to provide those 2 letters of recommendation. And then finally, one last point that we want to really highlight here is that projects applying to under one of the tracks for strengthening the quantum talent pipeline, so projects applying under tracks 1, 2, or 4 must strengthen the quantum talent pipeline at the certificate, undergraduate, or master's level. So a project that looks to support students only at the PhD level would not be eligible. Next slide, please. And again, this is talking about the grant amounts. This is something that we cover in detail in the RFP. So I don't want to spend too much time on this. I'll let you read the slide, encourage you to refer to the RFP. But there are 2 points here that we want to highlight because they are important. First, single institutions can apply for the Quantum Fast Challenge under specified funding amounts. And that is a single institution applying under tracks 1, 2, or 4 can apply for a grant up to $100,000. A single institution can apply for a grant under track 3 for up to $250,000. Awards over those amounts must go to an intersegmental project team. And so what that means is that a project under tracks 1, 2, or 4 that seeks over $100,000 must be intersegmental, and a project applying for track 3 over $250,000 must be intersegmental. What we mean by intersegmental is that it has to include at least 2 of the 3 segments of California public higher education. So it could include a UC and a CSU, or it could include a group of community colleges and a CSU. The key point being, again, simply that projects over those specified amounts must have that intersegmental collaboration to be eligible. Next slide, please. Okay, a quick few notes about milestones and timeline for this RFP. As I mentioned, we've got a second technical assistance webinar coming up in mid-September. We'll be covering the later stages of the application process in detail in that webinar. That's when we're going to cover the full proposal, get into the budget. We will be discussing those aspects of the RFP in detail in September, in that September webinar. For this point, 2 other key dates we just want to highlight. One is that statements of intent are due on October 1st, and the full proposal is due by October 20th. So Quantum Fast is a fast process. We would encourage project teams to try and get their statement of intent in before the October 1st deadline. The application portal for statements of intent is going to open on August 10th. We do encourage projects to try to get their statement of intent in before the deadline so they have more time for that full proposal stage. And just for everybody's awareness, we do intend to notify after the full proposals, after the review stage. Notifications of awards will be in late November, and then projects will be commencing in early February 2027. The next slide, please. And as I mentioned, a quick word here about the statement of intent. Again, we'll be talking more about the full proposal in the next webinar, and we encourage you to review closely the RFP instructions relating to that full proposal. But first, that statement of intent, it is required. Application teams cannot move on to the full proposal stage without first submitting the statement of intent. The statement of intent is primarily designed to allow us to assess whether proposed projects meet the eligibility requirements for Quantum Fast. As I mentioned, the application portal will open on August 10th. Once we receive the statements of intent, we will review them and follow up with project teams within a couple business days, either letting them know that they're able to proceed to the full proposal stage or letting them know that there are concerns about eligibility or alignment that need to be addressed before the teams can proceed to the full proposal. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to GO-Biz to talk a little bit about some of the additional priorities for Quantum Fast and also talk about some related funding opportunities. After GO-Biz, after Jaden has spoken, we'll come back to me and we will be getting into Q&A. But here, Jaden, please take it away.
Thanks so much, Tristan. The Quantum Fast Challenge seeks to advance greater collaboration among institutions of higher education, quantum industry stakeholders, and others to support the quantum ecosystem and expand the quantum talent pipeline. Like Tristan mentioned, even though public institutions of higher education are the only entities that can serve as the lead applicant, private industry stakeholders, nonprofits, workforce organizations, they can all serve as partners on an application. We are strongly encouraging lead applicants to form cross-institutional and cross-sectoral partnerships and include these entities as partners on project proposals. And in that vein, the RFP encourages explicitly for lead applicants to secure a 25% industry match based on the total amount of funding requested. The industry match can be either in kind or financial, and It's not required. I saw a few questions about this in the chat. That industry match is not required for eligibility, but it'll factor into the evaluation of proposals. Also mentioned earlier, Quantum California builds on the work of the California Jobs First initiative, and we encourage applicants to craft their application around this initiative as well. One way to do this is to connect with the appropriate Jobs First regional convener. Trey had mentioned these before, but these conveners are intimately familiar with regional objectives under the Jobs First initiative, and they can help expand industry connections, help facilitate coordination with regional economic development stakeholders, and ensure that your application is in alignment with regional economic priorities. You can locate your Jobs First convener at the webpage that Selena just dropped in the chat, or you can reach out to us at GO-Biz and we'll help you identify which entity is your regional convener. Next slide. I wanted to quickly mention this funding opportunity that the California Workforce Development Board released 2 weeks ago. We, as the program team for the Quantum Fast Challenge, encourage applicants to explore multiple funding opportunities, either to supplement funds that are awarded through Quantum Fast or to explore them as different avenues of ways to support your project. The Accelerator 14 grant program is one of these programs. It's $3 million in support for workforce development partnerships and quantum infusion. And through this program, the California Workforce Development Board will deploy $3 million in funding for projects featuring partnerships between employers and educational institutions to create scalable career pathways for learners at the community college level and below. So we encourage you to visit the Accelerator 14 webpage, read through that RFP. These are different grant programs, Quantum Fast and the Accelerator 14 grant program. They have different requirements. There certainly may be some overlap depending on what your project is and the elements that are included in there. But please do go ahead and visit that webpage and also review the webinar that they did last week and assess whether or not you would be a good fit for the FAST Challenge, the Accelerator program, or potentially both. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tristan to kick off the Q&A session. And what I'll do, Tristan, is I'll monitor the chat and I'll throw any questions I see in there into the Q&A box.
Great. Thanks so much, Jaden. We're going to go ahead and get started now with the Q&A portion of this webinar. I see we've got some questions in the Q&A box as well as some that have come through the chat function. I'm going to begin responding to some of these questions, and we do encourage you to, we encourage attendees to use the Q&A function of Zoom to ask additional questions as we continue. Going ahead and starting with some of the questions that have appeared thus far, I see a question asking if industry partners need to be in California. I'm going to start answering this one and then going to let my colleagues from GO-Biz finish the response. But to start this, we want to emphasize that Quantum Fast does aim to support the quantum industry in California. So industry partners do not necessarily need to be based in California, but they do need to be part of the California quantum ecosystem and need to be active in California. Jaden, Trey, please go ahead and add any additional information that you want to provide to that question.
No, Tristan, you hit it right on the spot. For example, we're not requiring that the company have to be, for example, headquartered in California. They can be someone who has satellite work in California, or they can be an international company that has domestic presence within our state. So that is definitely the use case. But yes, the work in of itself has to be tied to the California quantum ecosystem, including them specifically doing something in partnership with you here and them having activity here, as Tristan mentioned. But there's nothing that's, for example, they don't have to be headquartered in California or founded in California. Those are not a requirement.
Thanks, Trey. And we have another question here where, again, I will be starting the response on this, but then letting my colleagues from GO-Biz add anything that they would like. Got a question about whether for-profit businesses can participate on teams as sub-awardees. Now, when we refer to sub-awardees in the context of the Quantum Fast Challenge, we're referring to project partners that are receiving grant funds via the Quantum Fast Challenge. For awareness, the way we organize these grants is that there will be a lead institution that will act as the host for the project for purposes of grant administration. And then that host institution will act as the fiscal intermediary to pass on funds to the partner institutions as sub-awardees. So when we talk about sub-awardees, we mean institutions that are receiving grant funds. Under Quantum Fast, we encourage teams to partner with industry, but Quantum Fast is intended to provide funding for institutions of higher education, for nonprofit institutions of learning and education. Their institutions are encouraged to partner with industry, but we do not intend for Quantum Fast to be providing funding to for-profit businesses. Instead, as we mentioned, we encourage teams to partner with industry and for those industry partners to be providing matching funds to the project teams or be providing in-kind contributions as an alternative. Trey, Jaden, please feel free to add anything more you would like there.
No, you hit it on the spot with that one, Tristan.
Okay, excellent. Another question that has come through and that we see has come through several times is there a limit on the number of proposals per institution? I'm going to begin responding to this and we'll then let Lark finish the response because this is a question that Learning Lab is very familiar with from its previous RFPs. But just to get this ball rolling, there is no limit on the number of proposals from an institution, but we do encourage project teams to consider and institutions to consider whether it makes more sense for those multiple proposals to potentially be collaborating as opposed to competing amongst themselves. So we'll be considering all of the applications as a single pool. If you have multiple proposals from a single institution, those proposals are potentially competing with each other, and it could make sense for institutions to instead think about how those projects could be working with each other. Another key point to remember for Quantum Fast is that when we come to the selection portion of the RFP, the GO-Biz and GovOps will be considering geographic distribution of awards as a criteria. So having multiple proposals from the same institution could run into issues with respect to the desire to have geographic diversity among projects. Lark, please feel free to add anything that you would like here.
Nothing to add, Tristan.
Thanks. So in other words, so again, just to reiterate, there's no limit on the number of proposals from an individual institution, but we do encourage, but if you're at an institution where you have colleagues who are also applying, we do encourage you to think about whether it could make sense to collaborate as opposed to having competing applications. And another question that has come up is there a relative priority among the tracks? And the answer here is no. There is no prioritization among the tracks. Projects will all be considered as part of a single application pool. They're going to be reviewed according to their own merits and strengths, but there is no prioritization of one track versus another. They will all be considered based upon their own merits. Okay, so I am going to I'm taking a quick look at the Q&A here. Um, so there's a question regarding the letters of recommendation and who would be the best people to provide these letters. Here we do encourage you to take a look at the FAQs. Selena, have we put the FAQ document into the chat, please? We have an extensive FAQ document to accompany the RFP. And for everybody's awareness, the FAQ document is a living document. We will be updating this periodically through the RFP cycle as questions come in. But we have a couple of FAQ questions and answers that do address this question. We require that at least one of the letters of recommendation be from whoever the PI reports to at their institution. So this could be a chancellor, president, dean, provost, but one letter does have to be from the person that the PI is reporting to at their institution. For the second letter, we encourage but do not require that the second letter be from the industry partner or from nonprofit regional stakeholder partners testifying to that industry and regional collaboration that Jaden was speaking to. But again, as I mentioned, having that second letter from the industry partner or from regional partners, that's encouraged. It is not required. And again, please see the FAQ document for and review the RFP for details on that one. Another question that we have seen come through is referring to the 25% industry match. Jaden, since you began addressing this in one of your slides, I'm going to let you take the lead here while I do some quick catching up on the Q&A box, if that's okay with you.
Sure. So the 25% industry match, again, it's suggested, it's encouraged, but it's not required for eligibility. It will factor into evaluation of applications, and it does apply to all tracks. So we would encourage you to reach out to your regional convener. I know that there's a timeline consideration that was flagged in the chat where you may be worried about securing that industry match, given that October is the date where these deadlines start approaching. But please, reach out to your regional convener. They can help form those connections. And there's also some activity here in the chat. So I know it's hard to keep up, but you're among a group that seems very eager to partner.
And just to add that I think it was mentioned somewhere else in the chat, right? And I think Tristan hyped on it, like in kind is also eligible, right? So it does not necessarily have to be cash.
And thank you, Jaden and Trey. We also, I'll mention here that as Trey mentioned, in-kind contributions are very much acceptable for that industry match. As you will see in the full proposal instructions in the RFP, if you are partnering with an industry partner and receiving an in-kind contribution, we do ask that you provide in your proposal document a short explanation of how you value that in-kind contribution. But again, to reiterate Trey's point, that match can be either financial or in kind, and we discuss some of the different possible permutations of what an in-kind contribution could look like in the RFP. Got a question here about how broadly quantum is defined. To read the question in full, would development of new quantum materials, for example, superconductors, novel magnets, etc., qualify just as silicon was a material that needed to be developed for computing? Quantum materials need to be developed for quantum technologies. Is this perspective acceptable for this funding? That's a very good question. I think the point I want to emphasize is that quantum fast is not intended to support is not intended to support pure research, if you would. Quantum fast aims to support uh, use case demonstrations of quantum technologies. So in general, a project that is looking to do materials research would not qualify for quantum fast. Quantum Fast would, however, support a project that is for example, using new materials as part of the application of quantum technologies towards a real life use case. Jaden, Trey, please go ahead and add any additional nuance that you would like to this one.
Yeah, I think that we and this is kind of why quantum is a young sector, and so we understand, and it's also broad. It touches on enabling technologies from photonics to semiconductor to superconducting. So we understand that the field is large, um, but I think we're in the RFP it talks about within those two sections, right, where we're looking to achieve, and most of those involve, if you kind of look at those two pieces, a lot of them involve public-private partnership, which would mean that you would not be doing something like pure materials research, right, in many cases. But we do, like I said, if there's something specifically relative to your application and you are concerned about it maybe being tied to quantum or not, please feel free to reach out with us to us about it. But yes, we definitely understand that the industry is broad and there's enabling technologies and other things. We also understand that people have existing work relative to some of these sectors that are maybe federally funded, like with semiconductor or something in the likes, that may be able to build on something that's already been done before. So I would say that, we understand that the sector has a lot of layers, but of course we are still looking for the outcomes that Tristan mentioned.
Thanks, Trey. And Selena, could you drop the Quantum CA email address into the chat, please? We do encourage, as Trey mentioned, if you have specific questions relating to potential eligibility, we encourage you to drop us an email and we can respond to that in more detail. But as Trey mentioned, we are interested in that kind of use case application piece. But as Trey also mentioned, and this is there's an FAQ that does address this. We are very much aware of how in quantum the pure research and the application pieces relate to each other. And a goal of Quantum Fast is to encourage that a cycle of innovation and application. There's an understanding of how we want to support the use case applications, but understand the relationship of those to pure research. How is indirect cost handled? Is it allowed and at what rate? A great question. Uh, indirect cost is allowed. Quantum Fast has set a 10% indirect cost rate. We understand that this is lower than what institutions might be accustomed to through the California Model Agreement or through federal funding. Learning Lab and GO-Biz, however, have set a lower rate for Quantum Fast. we encourage you to look at the FAQs for and at the RFP for the details on IDC. One point we would make quickly is that 10% IDC rate is calculated based on the direct costs, not based upon the overall funding amount, including the IDC. In other words, the 10% is calculated off. If you had a grant for 220, where you were seeking $220,000 in direct funding, or $220,000 in direct costs, the 10% is calculated off that, not based off of the total amount to be funded, including the IDC. And another question, can we use grant funds to procure equipment? Yes. Quantum Fast funding can be used for equipment purchases. Once again, encourage folks to take a look at the FAQ document for more detail on this one. But generally speaking, Quantum Fast does not have set specifications in terms of what percentage of project funds can be used for one expense category or another. We will be evaluating the budgets holistically. Projects are also expected to provide a very strong justification for the different line items. So projects can certainly be used for purchasing equipment, but for purchase of equipment or for other line items, we would expect a strong justification, and we would expect a strong statement in the proposal that clarifies how that particular expense item is advancing the project proposal and the project goals. And I also see a question here with respect to the match. With respect to the requested or encouraged industry match, does the cost match apply to the overall budget? Does the cost match apply to the overall budget, or the budget that would go to industry? I think the best way for me to answer this would be to explain that Quantum Fast encourages, does not require, but encourages a 25% industry match based upon the requested funding. So, for example, if you were submitting a proposal where you requested $400,000 in funding, you would be encouraged to try to seek a industry match of $100,000, so 25% of that requested funding amount. And again, really encourage folks, if you need, if additional specification would be helpful, please feel free to reach out to us at our email address, and we're happy to follow up with additional clarification. Are there any budget restrictions? I think Trey put a response in based upon the FAQ response. There are budget restrictions, not, as we mentioned, with respect to specific spending categories, but there are budget restrictions. Please see the last section of the RFP, which enumerates some of those, including, for example, the specifications related to IDC. There are also some additional clarification in the FAQs with respect to frequently asked questions about those budgetary restrictions. And Jaden, I think we've handled most of the questions that have popped up, but Jaden, have you seen any that I have not yet responded to?
I don't believe so.
I am taking a very quick look. Selena, I know you've also been monitoring the chat and the Q and the questions. Do you see anything that we have missed thus far?
Someone asked if an institution is a single college or a district. Someone asked if we can create like a Google Sheet for people who are interested in partnering or some other way of sharing that back out.
Thanks so much, Selena. I had seen but missed that one about single institution or district. But actually, let me take that one about the Google Sheet first, because yes, we will be. We've been the Learning Lab and GO-Biz teams have been talking about the best way to facilitate that kind of networking. We do intend to do something, perhaps a Google Sheet, perhaps something else that helps folks connect with potential partners. So please stay tuned on that one for more information. Once we've decided how best we want to facilitate that kind of network building, we'll follow up with the listserv with more information. But yes, we will be doing something to facilitate networking and introductions for those who are looking for folks to partner with in this space. And then with respect to single institution or districts, it's a great question. And the answer is it can be either. A host institution could be either a single community college, or it could be a community college district. For reference, Learning Lab in the past has supported host institutions that are either a single community college or a district. So it could be either. Lark, please add anything that you would like to that one.
No, that's exactly right.
Excellent. Okay. Trey, Selena, have any last minute questions come through?
No, there was one about, does is collaboration permitted across institutions spread geographically? Yes. So it doesn't necessarily need to be within like your jobs first region, the other institution you're collaborating with.
Yeah, thanks, Trey. Yes, and just to reiterate what Trey said, Quantum Fast certainly encourages that regional collaboration, but that regional collaboration does not preclude working across regions or on a statewide basis. So this is certainly not limited to local collaborations. It is certainly open to collaborations that work across regions, across localities, and potentially statewide. Um, we're just approaching the hour, so I think this is the time for us to reiterate that we encourage you to check out the RFP in detail, encourage you to check out the FAQ document on the Quantum Fast webpage for more information. Please feel very free to email us with questions. And with that, I want to thank you all for joining us today. We hope this was helpful for you. We are very excited to see Quantum Fast launching and excited to see the proposals that we hope are forthcoming. And with that, what I want to do is just pass it off to my colleagues from GO-Biz to wrap this up.
Yes, thank you, everyone. As you can probably hear, I think one thing I just want to share is that, quantum we see no longer as artisanal. We're really about scaling and thinking about how we grow the ecosystem. So just keep that frame in mind as you're going into your applications. We want to thank, first of all, the Learning Lab and the partnership with the foundation and government operations agency on launching this challenge. Please, our teams are always readily available, and we look forward to working with you as you design proposals and submit them. Great. Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. And we will be posting this to the Quantum Fast webpage in the next couple days.